Welcome. My name is Norm Cummings. I'm a member of the board of the Milford Historical Society, and we're here today with Felicia Ndukwu, a former resident of Milford who's been living in Miami in recent years. She's a native of Nigeria and moved to this country when she was 9 years old, I believe. 12 years old, I'm sorry, and then she moved to New Milford when you were 15?
Yeah.
So she lived here as a teen, and we're going to be talking to her about her experiences and her memories of those years. And when she was at Milford High School, I remember her, I know she did well in school, and she was also a star runner for the first Milford High School girls track team, which is was historic. You guys are a really good team. So.
Yes.
She earned her BS in Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Marymount College in Tarrytown, New York, and her Master's in Social Work from Fordham University in the Bronx, in New York City.
Yeah, Tarrytown campus.
Okay. Before beginning a 33-year career with the State Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. She's the mother of a 28-year-old son, Gregory, who I met a few years ago and is a great young man. Felicia is recently retired and at a very youthful 65, as you can see. She's now happily living in Florida, but still comes up here to visit with her brother and Oz, who will be on camera here in a little while. She's returning to Milford today with her brother Oz and graciously is sharing her time and memories of her experience in Milford. Welcome, Felicia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
To start, how might your early childhood in Nigeria and language barrier you faced when you first came to the States, either when you moved to Michigan or then when you still came here, have affected how you perceived New Milford and your fellow students and friends while you were attending NMHS and living in town?
It was difficulty trying to assimilate to the culture and the language barrier being a major issue for us. You're young and you come into a country where you don't understand or you didn't understand what people are saying to you or how, the communication was very difficult. But I guess as a child, and that's what kind of made it easier for us, you were able to pick up quickly. I watching TV or just listening to watching the Flintstones was very good. Just watching people and listening to them. New Milford made it easy to really assimilate faster. I think it's probably because of the small, at the time, we were driving here and it was like, is this the place? But at the time it was a smaller community. My fellow students and friends, whom I haven't seen in years, they made it easy. It was comfortable, and I think because of that child mentality, it wasn't a struggle. It was not a struggle.
Did you have, I'm glad to hear that. New Milford seemed like it's been a welcoming place to many people, but our experiences have been, my experience was as a white child growing up in New Milford, and when you were a black teen. When you were at New Milford High School, there weren't a lot of blacks in town, but
No.
Did you have black friends, or were most of your friends white?
I think there were 5 in my class. There were 5 of us, and 3 were families that were related, either cousins. It was I think Chris Williams was one of them.
So you mentioned Donnie Taylor that day?
But that Cheryl, I mean, she wasn't in my class, but
Cheryl,
she was, she was, I think a freshman at the time. Bonnie Johnson was a senior. She was in my class. Can't remember the other 2.
So there were limited opportunities for you to have black friends.
I mean, there were some black people in the school, but it wasn't a whole lot of them. And if you remember, New Milford at the time was a small community. I don't think there was no buses. So, if you went places, you had to be family transport and that kind of stuff. And I didn't drive. Pretty much my friends didn't drive until senior year. So the ability to move around town, and the town was spread out.
Yeah, it's a big town.
It was a big town. And we lived out in Indian Ridge. Pumpkin Hill area. So it was far from the school and far from the center of town. So it wasn't.
What perspectives, you've already given some, but what perspectives can you share on your life here as a Black teen? Socially, did you date? Did you go to the school social activities? Did you, you were on the track team.
Yeah.
There wasn't a soccer team. I don't know if you would have played soccer. My guess is probably you might have if there'd been a team. That didn't start until a few years later.
I played tennis. I tried out for field hockey. It was too cold. I couldn't do the field hockey. I didn't date. It wasn't because of the lack of African American people, but my parents were very, very strict. It was like, and it was more of I, being the oldest, had to come home to make sure that my brothers were home. I should
mention Felicia's the oldest of 5 siblings, and one of whom died
before we came to America.
In Nigeria.
Yes. So I had to make sure that I was home in time for my younger brother, who was in kindergarten or in a lower grade, to be home and make sure that I could pick him up on the bus day. So it wasn't that it wasn't a lot of social activity for African Americans, but just the family responsibility. My mom worked second shift. My dad taught at Western Connecticut State University, and he didn't get home until late. So somebody had to be home to oversee the kids, and luckily,
they were smart enough to have a young lady as their first child to take care of the brothers.
Yeah, so, but yeah, it worked out that way. So it wasn't about dating or not being able to date because of lack of
having the opportunity.
Yeah, but the activities that were within the range of school time, I was able to attend.
So you kind of almost answered my next question. How about your experiences have been different from your siblings? You've already kind of dissected that.
Yeah, I think after they started getting older, and like Oz and Maurice, unfortunately, when they started getting older, they didn't come straight home. When John had to come home because of, he was in the elementary school and the bus, but when he started getting older, making friends, that responsibility was.
So John was probably like 7, 8, 9 years old when you were a senior in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So.
How might spending your teen years in New Milford have shaped your views of Black life in Connecticut in the United States? I know you had spent a couple years as an adolescent in Michigan.
Yeah.
How do you think your years living here, do you think you formed opinions of what life was like for Black people in the United States, or at least in Connecticut, because of your experiences here?
No, I would say, and I think Oz and I talked about this last night, we were very naive. My parents, I don't know if it was something that they knew or something that they were aware of, sheltered us in such a way, because at the time my dad had an opportunity to go teach, and I believe in Alabama State University, and they had gone there and visited, and my mom came back and said, no, we're not going there, and so a week later.
Because of the children.
Again, my parents were older people. None of their decision was shared with us, so we weren't even aware what the decision was and why they were the only two that went to do the tour. So a week later, they came back, and my dad got this job offer at WestCon, and then that's where we came. And I remember, I forgot to share this with guys. I remember the week we moved here, our stuff was still in the truck, and they were trying to find a place for us to stay. The school, WestCon was trying to find a hotel for us. That was the year that they had a big, massive riot at Milford High School. And I remember, it was like a lot of people in the street in Main Street, Danbury, and my mom was like, we're not living here. And that next day she got a realtor, and they came to New Milford, and a couple of days later, we found a place. We rented a place. One of the professor that was leaving WestCon had a place here in New Milford, right over the bridge. And then we stayed there for roughly about a month or two while the place that they were buying was being finished. and we moved, and that was.
So even just your kind of what you got out of that was basically Danbury to New Milford was worlds apart.
Yes.
And how it was with Black relations and.
That you didn't even know. I mean, I personally didn't know what the relation was or what the riot was about, but there was really like too many people and just a lot of. But when we came to New Milford, I think the first week it was you got a bus, you went to school, people came up to you and said, "Oh, you moved to that red house," and it was just like very welcoming. And I think that kind of put you at ease, knowing going forth that there wasn't anything. I mean, New Milford was so small at the time, and when I look at it now and think about it, it's like a world removed from other cities.
It's about twice the size it was back in those years in population, and even more important, back then people who lived in New Milford usually worked in New Milford or
worked in New Milford.
Whereas now it's like 70% commuter.
Everybody knew everybody.
Yep.
Once we got settled, and I think again, being a child, you were able to do things where your parents weren't able to do. We went down the street, we went up the street. Our baby staff were like practical everybody in that whole development. It was a lot of new families that were moving from New York. So it was again, I didn't feel any sense of threat. I was never bullied. I was never called out of my name. I think one experience that I remember, it was like yesterday, was a friend that invited me to their house, but it wasn't even her parents as much as it was the grandmother. But after that, I was like, when I left New Milford to go to school, that's when you started feeling like you were different from everybody else. Well, I think when I was here, I really didn't see the difference. I hung out with the popular people, the jocks, and everybody. So it wasn't really any sense of you're Black and you can't do this and you can't go here. I think it was probably much later that you can see the difference that,
Right, you experienced a lot in life beyond that, so
yeah.
certainly with your career.
Yeah.
How much were you taught in New Milford schools in the high school years? How much were you taught about, was there anything about Black history that you got out of, like you had in your American history class in sophomore or junior year, about Black history in the United States, or beyond maybe one day on the Underground Railroad and the fact that we had slavery in town and that caused the Civil War?
To be honest with you, because I tried when I read the questions, I tried to really remember if there was anything. The only difference from probably my knowledge of African American history, my father was a professor of African American history.
Okay.
And he was writing his dissertation. So if any discussion or any conversation that was had was something I learned from home. It wasn't anything that I really considered.
So the names like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, those were names that were familiar to you?
I don't remember.
You didn't know those?
Don't remember. I don't remember them from school, but I do remember
from home. Well, good that you had a father who was into that, so you had a good advantage.
So yeah.
Most people think of the civil rights movement as being something that happened when legislation was passed in 1863, but it's been going on over a century, 2 centuries, whatever, and it's still going on. But the 60s and the early 70s, as you were saying, what happened at Danbury High School, that was a very tumultuous time when people started to force things to happen, and they did happen. How much were you aware of, when you were 16 years old, how much were you aware of what Martin Luther King had said and done, or Medgar Evers, if you knew who he was? Yeah,
I knew a lot because when we were in Michigan, Martin Luther King had one of his co-followers, Dr. Green, was my father's advisor at Michigan State University. So his son and his wife and the kids, they had come to visit Michigan and came to my school. At the time, it was like they came, and I remember meeting his son and the daughter and the wife. And this, I think, was a little after he had gotten killed. So
you would have moved to Michigan the year after he died.
He died. So that was like, and I remember somebody saying his father was assassinated, which of course I didn't know what that word meant, and they finally explained it. And his father was killed because he was trying to free, African American people. And I'm kind of just like, wow, you just kill somebody for doing that. It wasn't a fighter, but I knew about that whole movement prior to coming to New Milford because of my dad's and Michigan State, Dr. Green. So,
How about in more recent years, or actually I shouldn't say more recent years, because John Lewis was very active in the early 60s too.
Yeah.
But how much have you, when you were in New Milford and you'd had a good upbringing in New Milford and had healthy, happy years here, and then you find out over the years the things that blacks like Lewis and so many other people have been fighting for, especially in the South, but even there's certainly plenty of racism in the Northeast. How much have you been aware that you were kind of like, wow, I think you mentioned the word naive.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we felt, whether or not it was purposely or unpurposely done by my parents to protect us from some of this unrest. But as an adult, after I left New Milford, I think the sense of community or environment that was already built in, you take that with you. So I tried, just being me, to gravitate to things and places that will not cause me any discomfort just by nature, and to put myself out. I'm a very outspoken person when it comes to human rights and advocate for my clients and so on. I think a lot of that sheltering here, whether or not it was by the community or the parents, you take that with you, and it kind of, it's like an umbrella, protects you from the unknown and the unseen. But so I would say that New Milford did help in providing that level of comfort that you can go into any place, hopefully, and not be.
The combination of what New Milford did and what your parents did to prepare you to be aware, just kind of see the world as it is, which obviously had to be somewhat stunning to you sometimes along the way. But you chose a career helping others with mental health, fighting addictions. Through the perspective of the years since leaving New Milford, how did growing up in New Milford hinder or help your growth as an adult professionally? Do you think there were times, was there any limitations on how far you could go or what direction you were going to go because of those years you were here, where you were kind of like living in a bubble in a way? Yeah.
Well, I think dissecting my career, the first part of it, when I finished undergrad, I went to work with Fairfield Hills, inpatient, and I was coming from the corporate world. I worked with Perk and Elmer for 5 years in their personnel department, and again, it's almost like it's taking care of people that I can't seem to get away from. But
don't apologize for that. That's a wonderful thing.
It worked, but working in a hospital, I think growing up here, seeing people as you, not seeing people as a white person, a black person, a Spanish person, a Chinese person, helped me in tremendously. Where you worked inpatient with somebody who's mentally ill, has very low impulse control. You work with somebody who's addiction, who's again not able to really regulate their mind in a way that a normal person would.
Right. So
by seeing them as a person, not a person with an illness, or somebody, a white person with an illness, seeing them as a person prevented me from getting hurt more often than not. We're talking like I did one-to-one with somebody who just, got arrested for something really horrible, and you're sitting right, arm's length.
Felicia, excuse me for a second. I could tell that you have that instinct or you have the inclination, because when you came over here to sit down, you turned your chair face more towards this way. So you have that in you. That's part of your nature.
But seeing somebody as a person first, never mind their race or creed, it allows you to be more free to interact.
Right.
And at some point, you hope that the other person will feel that, receive it, and reciprocate.
Did it become any issue at all that you were, during those years, that you were Black?
Oh, and a lot of times you get called. But then you also have to understand, these are people that are really mentally ill.
Yep.
People that went to favorite.
So their issues are far beyond
more than
any kind of racist
any
inclinations.
yeah,
Or whatever.
but that's the way to them to get at you, and see, what your reaction is.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to tell me that I'm Black. I see that.
Yeah.
So it's not that, and then you don't even, so they go after you. Not necessarily by being Black, but being a female, they think they can over. So it's just a lot of things. But being calm and not, like I said, having the mindset that I'm working with you as a person, not anything else, will help you to feel calmer and allow the help to take place. And I think growing up here and in the top of the house that we grew up in, that is, an aspect that I would say that I brought from growing up in the Milford.
Well, it's always great to hear that kind of perspective, and also great that for all those people who had you, that you happen to go into the right field. So, now this is a little difficult because you haven't lived here for many years, and you go back here periodically to visit people or whatever. If asked, what advice would you give to young Black families think about moving to New Milford? Obviously, you'd have to know more about what it's like for being in New Milford now.
Yeah. I think if I was to say when I was here and now, it's a great place. I don't know what the issues are right now, but it can't be any worse than any other town in this country. Probably better.
It's better, I'm sure, than most.
Far removed, from all the other influencers. I mean, we still have the TikTok and Facebook and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a different world.
People. I think just see people as they are, allow somebody to either offend or not offend you first before you make the judgment. Do not judge person on sight just because they are different from you. We're all, human beings inside. We come from different backgrounds. We speak differently. And it's not always black and white, or even gray for that matter. There's so many different variations of people. And the person that you think the least of is probably the person that surprised you and rise to the occasion when you need help or, just a friend.
You do see the world glass half full, more than half full, which is wonderful. I love it.
I don't know any other way, and I'm not sure where that comes from, because I surprise myself a lot of times. I literally moved from a comfortable neighborhood that I lived for 20 years to Florida into a building because Oz was there, and then he's not there, and I'm there by myself, but I'm not. I have like 100 and some odd people right now that I really say this is my family. I mean, I love where I am. I cannot even begin to imagine, if I was a different person, would I be able to survive?
And I know, and I'm not saying this to flatter you or whatever, I know you're well remembered and fondly remembered by a lot of people in the Milford.
Oh my God.
You might not be hanging out with your classmates in school.
I want to see. I just said, oh my God, I should find these people. But then again, a lot of my friends are probably married and, changed their last name.
Sure.
So it's really hard to track people down.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I really, if I called you, I'm sure I would get a lot of people's different names now.
Do you have any other thoughts you want to offer that we haven't covered, or any things that you think are important on how New Milford impacted your life?
I think New Milford impacted my life in a good way. I don't know what type of a person I would have been if we had settled in another place and you got exposed to more negative connotations, or would I be the person that I am today? I think about that a lot, and the choices that I made in life, would it be different? And I try to instill this on my son by living in a small town again, sending him to a small school again, because I think I got a lot out of it for me. So
That's about as high a tribute as you probably can pay.
we didn't move around a lot, so so it kind of gave him a more of a ground. And even like him now, like me, he still has friends from elementary school, like that type of
Right.
feeling is really
Good for
good
him.
to know that, I have some friends that I went to, Tracy Elementary School, Ponus Middle School, and then, Trinity High School in Stanford. So he's got all that childhood good experiences from people from small towns, which
Good.
I think that's what
And you trace that all back to
yeah,
your experience here.
paying it forward.
Good for you. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your time and your thoughts, and I hope I didn't cut you off in any way.
No.
You were wonderful.
This was
and
perfect.
You were every bit as eloquent as I thought you'd be, and thoughtful, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks.